situation. As long as the Croats are here in Australia, are in existence different Croatian organizations and associations. There are a variety of Croatian associations here and institutions. Now, recently, 6-7 months ago, we really formed a coordination committee, which is an institution to coordinate activity in Croats and to help general assimilation of the Croatian community here and promotion of Croatian interests.
So it would be wrong to suggest that the Croatian coordinating committee was formed in order to give yourselves to unify what scattered forces.
It was a synchronizing body. It was a synchronizing body which in the Constitution has intention to coordinate all activity in most efficient way according to the interest of class and conformity with the law of Australia. We really stipulated in our constitutional rules that all our activity will be strictly in conformity with the law of Commonwealth of Australia, and that we will do all our best to promote interest of Croatia and Australia in general.
Going away completely from the question that we hear about, is there not the danger of you being accused of forming a close-knit community within a community? As it were, you were not integrating with the Melbourne community, but forming a community of your own?
I feel that the question which you prefer could only result because you are not very familiar with the aim of our coordination committee. But the coordination committee is a purely instrument, and I thought the subject which we can discuss, I don't mind discussing, to help to you.
Well, it just struck me that Croatians are now in Australia are Australians, not necessarily.
Oh, we are Australians, but I can kindly, I like kindly to remind you, and I would appreciate very much if you take one little note.
Yes.
And that is that whoever could not be loyal to the country of origin can't be loyal Australia. Quickly will forget the country from which he arrives, and he is not interested in affairs of the country of arrival. He has no much hope in a present generation to be loyal to real favorable way to the new country. The new generations will assimilate quicker, and any assimilation or any attempt to assimilate a community in a very speedy way does not have ever success. But I feel that whoever is loyal to country of origin, very, very loyal to Australia also. That's very logical.
What are the main sort of things that the committee would do then? What are the main sort of things the committee would do then?
For instance, meet you. It's one practical thing.
Now, getting down to what we're here about tonight, obviously a lot of accusations have been levelled at the Croatians by the Yugoslav. Could you say with any certainty, without any moral conviction, but any certainty, that Croatians are not responsible for what has happened in recent days?
Well, before we discuss about events of the recent day, today we're not celebrating any particular happening of a couple of days. We are really commemorating today the day of 10th of April. And I think that's more of important to discuss about that one than about the questions which happened a couple of days ago, which could be created by anything. And I will be only pleased to answer to your question a bit later. But it would be of more interest to know that Croatia is an old nation and has a very right and have always their own nation and state. Today, Croatia is enslaved in Yugoslavia. And Yugoslavia, as such, is not a nation at all. It is a more geographical concept, which means Yugoslav, Slav. It's a concept of South Slav or Southern, and in such a way, it's a very unfortunate combination, which is very dangerous for world peace, and I'm not exaggerating. You will see there's definitely troubles in that part of the world, and that kind of imperialism had triggered about 1914, for World War I. And we know, and we see that Yugoslavia is the first writer of democracy, then a second writer of communism, and third writer and hypocrite of any situation, and really dangerous to create any kind of problems. And it is shaping up well. It's not only shaped up by Croats, it's shaped by every part and components which is there, and is ruled exclusively by a ruling class. And one misconception which generally happens in Australia here is that we Croats are hating the Serbs, or there is a conflict between the Serbs and Croats. That's incorrect. Yugoslavia brought such conflict as byproduct. That would be very foolish and completely illogical to consider that Croats are against Serbs. We feel and we like to live in a great peace, in a nice future, with Serbs and other nations around. Same as would be very illogical to consider any sensible Australian that he will be asking for having any unfriendly relations with Indonesia. It's impossible. So it's no sensible Croat will really say that he wants to have a conflict with Serbs. But where conflict starts, there's no good denying conflict, which definitely exists. There is. But it's fine. Where is the cause of the conflict? Is that Yugoslav concept and Yugoslav conception, because Yugoslavia is product after World War I, the line was drawn not by any way of consideration, but the big powers in the glory of the victory. Just and the form, therefore the Yugoslavia. So Yugoslavia was formed, and so formed the town. And as long as Yugoslavia is going to exist, it will be conflict between nations which are inside, between the ruling class and enslaved nations. But today, and the subject which was discussed so many times is a 10th of April, the Day of Independence, which is correct, and we celebrate the Day of Independence. And the main accusation, which we like to clarify, is that we are connected, and 10th of April is connected with Germans, and with the German invasion of Yugoslavia. That is accusation and all the time discussion. Before I clear that point, if it's possible in a few words, I kind of like to remind you that whenever somebody is in a serious problem, when somebody is in prison, say we are here in that cell, and that's our prison, we are slaves, we would not be really choosing which wall we're going to break out to go free. You would not ask, is that on that side Soviet Union, or would be on that side or that side. So it was under the circumstances selected and used the conditions of the world war situation. It was formed through the revolution, a Croatian independent state. Many countries recognized, including Switzerland. We are very sorry that with the circumstances of war, Great Britain, United States and Soviet Union were unable to recognize Croatia. But if the terms of our situation there, that will follow up, for sure. But behind that is not today what should be distinguished very clearly in our celebration. Yugoslavs tried to impose on us that celebrating 10 of April, because that's the more interesting subject of which we have to clarify, that celebrating 10 of April, we are celebrating a certain regime, a certain situation. It's kindly to understood that in a Croatian celebration of 10 of April is a celebration of historical intentions of Croatian nation to be always free and have their own nationhood and statehood. As far as regime and government is concerned, that should be distinguished. There is no celebration of movement or political party which should be very, very valuable in these days to form to Croatia. But it is a purely principle of Croatian statehood that we celebrate. And we do not really like to be mixed up regime, government, and situation of internal cases in Croatia with our general celebration of 10 of April. That's the most important to distinguish. And obviously, our Yugoslav enemies are really imposing on us that we are celebrating only that particular regime and government. Take in consideration for a real fact that the generation which made that celebration is practically very new. I'm going 45, 46, 47, 20 years old, has nothing to do, and they still celebrate a principle of freedom. And so, we had a lot of talk, and I'll be more than pleased if you would like to put any question to clarify that and enlarge it.
So can you say in your own words, what in fact happened on the 10th of April?
10 of April is just, as any nation, what happened is a date, and a date as such is usually date is selected of the circumstances and things which happen around the day. It doesn't happen on that particular day.
Yeah.
It is a day which we selected. See, the Croatian Revolution in these days, which took place, actually the Croatian independence was proclaimed in certain part of Croatia days earlier, and on 8th of April, and then it was continued that way. But we selected that date as official date, where we say the Croatian nation used very rightly privilege and right to be declared themselves statehood and nationhood and dissolve, that is, dissolve themselves for Yugoslav Slavia. That's why, because Yugoslavia is the cause of trouble. And we really, on that day, we officially discontinue our association, our connections to Yugoslavia. And that's why we celebrate, because we have in mind to repeat a tale of April. And we hope it's going to happen in the near future under new circumstances, irrespective of allies.
And to get down to the last few days,
To the latest news. Yes.
Certain accusations have been leveled at the Croatian community. But they were the cause of the two bombs. Now, whilst I accept that you deny this, would you accept that there might be some extremist Croatians amongst the Croatian community?
Whatever it is to say, first we're talking about the fact. There's no doubt the bomb was false.
Yeah.
That will be behind the doubt. But since we are not connected, see, we Croatian associations, and I couldn't guess any group between Croats which is going to really trigger such a bomb or involve themselves in such venture. Since we're not connected, it's impossible to answer in details. I just can sum up a few real cases like that. It's very unusual, and it sounds to me very strange that bomb exploded right there ahead, and Mr. Jurjević had that particular meeting. And that explosion should be more loud by fact than by effect. It should sound more boo than make a damage. And that boo, which resulted in echo of a bomb, has to be used, and it was used very dramatic and very dramatizing way by Mr. Jurjević.
You're saying in effect that the bomb was planted by the Yugoslavs themselves?
Just, I suggest that, as a circumstances, do not say, it's unusual. If you sum up, I feel that they're really a bit naive how they planted it. 2 days before that conference, when the whole class had to be accused of bombers, terrorists, or such thing, very synchronized at once. A bomb exploded in Elizabeth Street, and a bomb exploded in front of Mr. Jurjević's home, and Mr. Jurjević in a very strange way described the case that he arrived home, he saw some parts, and said that must be bomb. I read in the paper, I didn't hear, but I read at least if the paper reproduced his statement correctly, was in a blue parcel, and he's going inside the home and said, that must be bomb. He didn't bother very much and said, how about I read note the bomb is out, and then bomb exploded. He's not hurt. He's now back in his flat. And when we take the past statements of Mr. Jurjević, he's always calling it so that he's living on the 11th floor, frightened from bombs. For about 4 years, wherever he opened his valuable mouth, they said, I have to live in a high building because someone is going to put a bomb on me. And he's always talking about the bomb. Then he said, somebody mailed bomb to me, somebody put bomb to me, but I didn't receive a pass. Croats are threatening me. And still I see that he never was really scratched, touched, or any harm was done to him. And I know him. What more, Mr. Jurjević was pretty coming in his community here. He was calling him to the church. And he was hundreds of Croats around. No Croat would bother about him because we consider him as a slightly emotional man, which is really a bit excited, and no one really give him any particular attention. Why Mr. Jurjević was never attacked, said, when he was mixing up with 1,000 Croats? Why Mr. Jurjević was not ever attacked? You sum up, I can't answer that, but well, Mr. Jurjević really. Mr. Jurjević was going, for instance, in a Croatian celebrations of 10th of April somewhere a year ago in Geelong, and walking in the hall about hundreds of Croats sit down, and the Croats were discussing with him, and he was not happy. If the Croats are so violent, at least somebody will tell God. Now, it's unusual that...
In fact, you're saying that, on the one hand, the bomb possibly was a...
Yes, I say. Yes, I say.
On the other, that as it happened 2 days before the public conference, or the public meeting...
It's too much distance, isn't it?
Possible. It could have been to draw attention to himself.
That's fine. That is correct. I feel, I have no evidence to say. In a tradition of conspiracy of Yugoslav missions here, in a tradition of conspiracy, and they are very, very professional people, with plenty of money and plenty of knowledge, that everything is possible. And not that the bomb is only used in Yugoslav affairs. That crack, which may probably damage on some window or something like that, and no harm to anybody in person, is also used as little political issue before elections. I say that one is all that is synchronized, and that's all synchronized. We have nothing before. I can't like to mention something, and if I will kindly ask if it's possible. We have been discussing many times in our meetings officially. We have nothing against Australian Labour Party. We like Mr. Kasić. We feel sorry. Would you mind saying that? And I really feel sorry. that Dr. Kasić is misinformed, and we will always welcome him to see Croatian representation, our Croatian coordination committee on a round-the-table talk. Come on, talk about it. Dr. Kasić, why are you hungry to be used?
Yeah, you invited him here tonight, I understand.
Yes, we invited him tonight, but he's welcome to call any time. I will always be willing to see him call if he's home, anybody of us, because he's a nice politician, he's a reputable man, and we're very sorry that Yugoslavs are using him. And it seems to me that he's using along with his Yugoslavs in internal Australian politics. He really tries to dramatize that about somebody who's going to put a bomb. Last night I heard him on the television saying, when I walk out, somebody's going to put a bomb. He's all the time talking about a bomb. That was a bit exaggerated.
Isn't it also quite possible, though, that possibly some extremist Croats might have put the bomb there just for the same circumstance or coincidence that April the 10th is coming up?
As that is possible, as that what you say is possible, no one can exclude such thing, their chances are much more that some Yugoslav conspirator or Yugoslav agency planted the bomb to synchronize it with that particular...
Excuse me, no, this...
Sorry.
So you're saying, whilst you know you don't know the full facts,
Beggars?
you were saying,
Yeah.
whilst you don't know the full facts, on the one hand, the public has to decide, did Mr. Jurjević or his colleagues use the bomb as a means of drawing attention?
I don't say that he personally.
On the other hand,
Yes.
no, all his colleagues.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there might just be some Croatian extremists who are prepared to do this sort of thing, of which you have no control.
If any Croatian extremists have done that, I can tell you, they must be really driven somewhere by Yugoslav conspiracy. Because in a conspiracy...
But of the 25 or 35,000 people that are in Victoria, obviously the Croatian community, or the Croatian community, has no control over it.
Oh, no, that's about something what is... Before we make conclusions, see...
There are extremist Croatians as much as there are extremist Australians.
That would be done.
There are extremist Nazi.
Yeah, that's right. You have Nazi party, we haven't, for instance. I see an Australian Nazi party, not Croatian Nazi party.
Exactly. So the Australians do not take responsibility for those extremists.
Oh, yeah, well, we can't control redbacks, of course, but the redback can be very usefully used by very conspirators of Yugoslavia. For very, very usefully used. What I like to do, the coincidences are too much. When we talk, we should talk with logic. We don't just say what I wish. It's not good wishful talking. Facts talking.
Yes, it's right.
Now, the facts are the Croats in Australia are approximately 20 years.
Yeah.
Majority of migration. I arrived 22 years ago. And we see here the majority of Croatian migration arrived about 15 years ago. 15 years ago. And believe me, that's the migration which is very anti-Yugoslav. It's a very old one. And you really, Australian public started very recently to hear about some bombs, violence, publicity about violence. It is unusual, but it is something very valuable to notice that activity happened since Australia established diplomatic relations with Yugoslavia. And since the Yugoslav missions were really formed in Melbourne, Sydney, and Australia got to ambassador level to Australia. Since then, it happened more of such activities. I'm suggesting that these Yugoslav missions set up a special conspiracy circles which are here to cause the trouble. We do not feel, Croatian associations, Rev. Kasić, church, everybody here. And this one is that we really do not like to use the violence. Not only that we are against the violence hypocritical, everybody say for peace. You know? Americans talking about peace and still using bombs. Everybody talking about peace and as atomic bombs and such thing. Everybody is there. I don't like to use peace and violence hypocritically, just to say something. But we do not use violence not because we are peace-loving people. That doesn't mean anything, that word, because it doesn't help us. If violence would help, we will use it, I can tell you.
Yeah.
Right? If we feel that we're going to achieve something by violence, I'm the first one which will say, yes, use violence. But since I know well that we couldn't achieve anything outside Croatia by violence, the revolution for Croatia will be carried on in Croatia, not in Australia and Canada. The revolution for Croatia will be carried there. Outside here, violence is only on disadvantage. And if we hear in our committee that somebody tried to use violence, we will stop it. We proved you yesterday, sir. For instance, that was the meeting yesterday, right? Of that, what they call Democratic Committee of Yugoslavia. It was about 30 Yugoslavs, the rest was guests of Australia. We could make decision to fill up that hall with about 1,000 Croats, all our supporters, make nuisance of ourselves and nuisance of them. Because it was free and public hall. Since we do not lie, since we preserve the right that everybody has right to speak and express their own opinion. If anybody was there yesterday, could see that we put direct line, and we inform Australian police that if anybody is causing trouble inside, it is on his own accord, against the wish of our committee and our coordination of organizations and all our community here. We will make only peaceful demonstration outside, not to trigger any trouble, but to just show up to Australians that we are not Nazis, that we can know how we can control our crowd in a simple way, and we say, walk over there and say, that's the line, and don't cross the cross. When one man was walking there and the police superintendent approached him, and I said, obey police officer. Our message was, cooperate with police force. We like to cooperate with authority here, and we prove that we do not like violence. If we really like trouble, we could cause it. But cause doesn't help us. So that activity and that bomb which happened is not on help to Croatia. That bomb helps only Yugoslavs.
Yeah.
Why Croats going to plant a bomb which is going to help Yugoslavs? Only Yugoslavs are planting bombs which helping them. And Croats not going to, we're not going to achieve anything that way. And that all give us a suspicion that the ability of Yugoslav missions, that all happened. The Australian, which is used to live in peace, where political life is going to parliament, is unused to Belgrade kind of policy and politics. In Belgrade, politics is carried on by conspiracy, assassination, murder, knife, and bomb. That is, the bomb is imported from Belgrade. Trigger is killing the Ferdinand, and is really, if to understand you personally, without talking about message, there is no king, Serbian king, except a fellow in exile which died from liver trouble, from a lot of drinking, or something like that, and no one died in a natural way. Every king for centuries is killed by son, or son is killed dead, or another dynasty while somebody else opened the door and killed husband and wife and children. The assassination and death is inherited in tradition of Belgrade and is imported from Belgrade here. And that bombing is more what is stimulating a situation of Belgrade politics. That's what.
Sorry, I have to catch it.
I have to go.
Well, I was just curious, so naming it group yesterday, the Croatian Liberation Movement.
They say Croatian Liberation Movement.
Does that exist here at all?
Of course it is Croatian Liberation Movement. Of course. Croatian Liberation Movement is one of the Croatian organizations which has a representation now of the Coordination Committee. We have a Croatian Liberation Movement, we have a Croatian resistance, we have a Croatian soccer clubs, we have many Croatian institutions, we have anything.
And at the same time, the Ustashi was mentioned. Does that exist?
Now, Ustasha was mentioned, but what's the most unusual talking about Ustasha? That people talking about Ustasha without knowing about Ustasha. Always is just name pronouns. I'm sorry, I doubt very much that you know the meaning of the word Ustasha.
I don't.
Do you know? And despite the fact you use it many times. No, not that you personally, but it won't hurt many times. Ustasha in a meaning means insurgent for justice. So in a Croatian word, that's the meaning. But Ustasha is not in existence anymore. And then Mr. Jurjević, somebody said, there is Ustasha emblem. How about I produce one emblem of Queen Victoria, but she's not still alive? Doesn't exist now, Queen Victoria. She's long time dead, isn't it? And if somebody carry at home a picture of Queen Victoria, you wouldn't say that she's walking around, would you? No. Or what I say, that's the person. We're talking organization. Somebody else can have a good Scotch fellow could have some big emblem with all proudness on Inverness spite 3 centuries ago. But no sensible man will say that that division of that regiment is in existence. Ustasha was in existence. Ustasha was carrying and was doing a revolutionary activity before the war. Actually, Ustasha is a result of Yugoslav oppression and terrorism. And it was what? But it was formed as a revolutionary organization before the war, but it changed in existence.
So what in effect you're saying is that the various pictures of people giving the Ustasha salute and things like that, it's all, well, it's in the past, it's finished.
That's the past. But if we find Ustasha salute in Ustashi, what means there is no Ustasha movement, there is no Ustasha organization under Ustasha name in existence in Australia or anywhere in the world. And we can say, if we Croats sit together, and we could have a respect for such things, and somebody is going to say, we know that our subject is sufficiently complicated, isn't it?
Absolutely.
No, you agree? It sounds complicated. It sounds confusion plus.
Yeah.
Alright? Now we are aware of that fact. And we do not like to complicate the issue. Only a foolish fellow tries to complicate the issue. To bring in our life with shame in political activities will complicate the issue. Where is so many? The only person who was carrying Ustasha emblem was Mr. Jurjević. We had hundreds of Croats yesterday, no one had Ustasha emblem, except Mr. Jurjević. He's carrying good people, he's very proud about it.
He was Ustasha.
Just don't comment about that, because he can't do it. Understand? That he's carrying good Ustasha. Just more of this please. Then, sir, he's carrying. We had a demonstration about 8,000 people yesterday, some of the 600. There was no single Ustasha. Not that we are ashamed of Ustasha, not at all.
Yeah.
But we don't feel any need to use it. That's all. It belongs to the history. That's.
Well, I've got one more question.
Yes.
We talked yesterday at this meeting of war criminals being, Yugoslavian war criminals wanted by the Yugoslav government being in Australia. Do you know anything of this?
I have,
Name 20 or so.
or Mr. Jurjević can reprint as many names as he likes, but I would wish that he really opened his mouth and said, Mr. War Criminal, why he doesn't say, that is the war criminal, and how about we see that? Do you think, today, you're talking to me and my age is 50. When war finished, I was 24. Kid. That fellow was born. We were 20, 22, 23. And that was the product of imagination. And would you think that Australian government will tolerate war criminals to be here? Doesn't matter labor or liberal or whatever it's matter. I doubt very much. But for Yugoslavs, to print something is very simple. They just say anything. It is a policy like that, usually. Say like that. Anybody who does not agree with an American policy, say, or the Allied policy in Vietnam, some people say here are communists. There are many people which are not communists, that they don't agree with American involvement or Australian involvement. It's usually say whoever doesn't agree with, he's against Australian involvement in Vietnam, say, just take and say, he's a communist. You know what is the case. Say, whoever agrees with him, he's a fascist. You know well that's not the case. So Brandy, but Mr. Jurjević in Yugoslav, you don't mention him, Yugoslavs, they can't operate with one very clear fact. Croats are for freedom and liberation. Because if they say they are for freedom and liberation, they would say it's very logical. Right? But if they brand war criminals, Nazis, fascists, and any Croat is any Croat is practically branded immediately fascist, Nazis, if it's for independence of Croatia. And that's every Croat. So that happened if they are Croat generalists for him. Because all Croats are for independence and freedom of Croatia. So very quickly, we all branded Ustaša. We all branded like Nazis. And on the other side, if the situation will be different, we will be all branded Nazis. Or we will brand communism. That's all. This is just expressions which they use. I'm sorry for Dr. Kans to be misused in such a confused issue.
Well, I think I'm finished. Would you excuse me, Bill? I really have to get back to the office.
You're welcome, sir.
Mr. Jurjević. It's a witness here in Australia, Mr. Jurjević was the first time shot in Yugoslavia when the war was started. And after he tried the Yugoslav army for Egypt, his good health. Is epileptic. And in Egypt, he was against the Serbs. First, he fought with them. He was against the Serbs government. And when Tito's churches recognized Tito's fighting in Yugoslavia in the wartime, if you got any idea about past, you know, because you are young people, then Mr. Jurjević turned in the camp of the partisans, Tito's side. And everybody hiding there, the very woman who is 20 years, just a moment, 20 years, that's official, 20 years older than him, and he was member of a communist party in Egypt.